In 1978 in America, there was a man named Barry, a captain for Trans Am Airline. Barry had a beautiful girlfriend and a life everyone admired. Barry thought his entire life would continue peacefully like that, but unexpectedly, trouble struck. That evening, as Barry arrived at his hotel to rest, a bearded man approached, getting straight to the point that he knew Barry was smuggling cigars to make money. That statement made Barry break out in a cold sweat. If this got out, Barry would lose everything. Seeing Barry turn pale with fear, the man continued, introducing himself as Monty, a CIA agent, and invited Barry to join his team. Afterward, Monty took Barry to a secret airplane hangar. As he stepped inside, Barry's eyes lit up. Before him was a super-fast plane, the fastest in the world, with 2 powerful engines. Barry couldn't take his eyes off it. He was mesmerized, inspecting every detail on the fuselage. Seeing this, Monty was very pleased and immediately revealed Barry's mission. Barry's task was very simple. Just fly the plane to hostile countries in Central America and take reconnaissance photos. However, Monty then sternly instructed Barry, "This is a top-secret national matter, absolutely not to be revealed to anyone, not even your girlfriend Lucy." But Barry, at this moment, didn't care about any of that. He just wanted to immediately test fly this dream plane. Monty then opened the hangar doors so Barry could take it for a test flight into the sky. That experience ignited a desire for adventure in Barry's heart. When he got home, he discussed it with Lucy, but of course, he couldn't tell her the whole truth, only saying he planned to quit his job to join Monty's new company. Lucy found it utterly absurd. She'd never seen anyone quit being an airline captain to work for some strange company. They had an unpleasant argument, but Barry couldn't suppress the excitement within him. That very night, during a flight, he suddenly left the cockpit, abandoning his crewmates and passengers, and stepped into a completely new future. From then on, Barry officially became Monty's man, flying deep into Central American countries, facing all sorts of dangers to take intelligence photos. Although each time was highly dangerous, Barry found it incredibly exhilarating. The sharp photos earned Monty praise from his superiors. But then Barry encountered new trouble. He had married Lucy and had a daughter, but still hadn't dared to tell his wife the truth. Even his monthly salary wasn't much. Barry just wished Monty would pay him a bit more, but Monty said nothing, only telling him he was working for his country before giving him another mission in Panama, to pay a general for intelligence. Barry was already so used to these kinds of missions that he carried it out with ease. In the blink of an eye, it was 1980. Barry landed in Colombia to refuel when, unexpectedly, 3 men drove up to find him. They openly displayed guns tucked into their waists and forced Barry into their car. Without hesitation, Barry had no choice but to go with them to their base. There, he met their leader, Pablo. Pablo exposed Barry's true identity, revealing he knew Barry frequently traveled through Central America taking photos for the CIA. Barry immediately panicked, repeatedly insisting he only worked for a South American company. But Pablo burst out laughing upon hearing this. He didn't intend to harm Barry, only wanted him to help smuggle contraband into the US when he returned. Immediately after, Pablo took Barry to his plantation, explaining how difficult smuggling goods was, reluctantly admitting he had to rely on Barry, and promised to pay $2,000 per kilogram if successful. Hearing this, Barry was overjoyed. This makes money even faster than taking pictures. But after inspecting the site, Barry discovered a fatal flaw. The runway Pablo had built was too short. Several pilots had already lost their lives on it. So, Barry suggested reinforcing the runway. But Pablo just replied, "If you can do it, do it. If not, get out." That struck a nerve with Barry's pride, and he decided to join immediately, but emphasized he wouldn't follow Pablo's original plan because it was too easily exposed. Barry proposed dropping the goods in Louisiana, a state he was familiar with. Pablo would just need to send people to the marked spot to pick them up. Pablo agreed immediately and ordered everything prepared. But as they were about to depart, Barry opened the cockpit door to find someone already sitting in the co-pilot's seat. Pablo quickly explained that this person was coming along to protect the cargo, but Barry refused. "The plane is already carrying 1,500 pounds of contraband. With me, it's just enough weight. Now, with this living saint, we'll have to walk home instead of fly." Seeing this, Pablo had to concede, ordering the other man off the plane and giving Barry a protective gift, a cross necklace for good luck. Barry hung the necklace on the dashboard, took a deep breath, and started the plane, completely unaware that Pablo and his men were betting on whether Barry would die right there. Barry slowly pushed the throttle, and the plane began to accelerate, but it was too heavy, and it failed to lift off several times. Finally, the plane staggered into the air before crashing straight into a patch of trees. Luckily, there were no large trees in that area, so Barry skimmed over the treetops and managed to fly. But as soon as he entered U.S. airspace, he was detected by military radar. Barry, completely oblivious, quickly headed to the rendezvous point. Barry activated autopilot, opened the hatch, and dropped the cargo, completing his first transport run. The next time Barry returned to Colombia, Pablo and his brothers threw a celebration and personally handed him a bag full of money. But before he could enjoy his success for long, a swarm of soldiers suddenly raided the mansion, and a fierce gun battle immediately erupted in the courtyard below. Pablo rushed out to assess the situation, telling Barry to stay put inside. But Barry had never witnessed such a scene, and his sense of unease grew stronger. Barry, clutching the bag of money, rushed outside to find Pablo and his men apprehended. Immediately after, he himself had a gun pressed to his head. A few days later, Pablo and his group were released innocent, with only Barry left locked in a filthy prison. When Barry was at his most desperate, he suddenly heard a familiar voice. Monty had arrived. Seeing Barry with a bruised face and even 2 broken teeth, Monty, instead of offering comfort, told Barry he had been charged with drug smuggling, and the police would search his house at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Hearing this, Barry was thunderstruck. He could endure suffering but didn't want to implicate his family, so he continuously begged Monty for help. He didn't realize he was falling right into Monty's trap. Monty smiled knowingly, saying he would help, but Barry would have to do something commensurate in return. Currently, there was a serious coup in Nicaragua. The U.S. president wanted to capitalize on the opportunity to support the rebels, but Congress, fearing America would be dragged into war again, flatly rejected the proposal. However, the president clearly wouldn't give up. He secretly approached the CIA, hoping to transport weapons to the rebels. After much circumvention, this mission ultimately fell into Monty's hands. After all, he did have a top-notch pilot at his disposal. However, because this was a top-secret mission, Monty couldn't expunge Barry's criminal record. He could only advise Barry to return to his hometown, to the small town of Mena, in Arkansas. Though it wasn't what he expected, Barry had no other choice. He rushed home, woke up Lucy and his sleeping daughter, urging them to pack their bags quickly. This unusual behavior left Lucy utterly confused, repeatedly asking Barry what exactly was going on, but Barry didn't know how to explain it clearly, only begging her to trust him this time. Just as dawn broke, the entire family had packed up and driven away from the place they had called home for many years. Not long after, Barry arrived in Mena, a town with just over 2,000 residents. They finally reached the dilapidated house Monty had prepared. Before he could even settle his wife and children, he saw Monty drive up, and he rushed out to greet him. This time, Monty brought an enormous gift, presenting Barry with an airport spanning over 800 hectares, with everything inside under his ownership. This news hit Barry like a punch to the face, stunning him. He couldn't believe his ears. He looked around the airport, unable to believe it was all his. Of course, Monty wasn't that benevolent. He opened a wooden crate in the corner, revealing it was packed with AK-47s, and ordered Barry to transport these goods to Nicaragua. Monty also handed him a map detailing force deployments in the Gulf of Mexico. With this map, Barry could easily evade all control systems. Monty brought even more than that. Not only that, Monty also retrieved the bag of money that had been confiscated by the military and returned it to Barry. At this point, Barry had no reason left to refuse. Even so, he knew things had gone too far and that his wife would surely be suspicious. So as soon as he got home, he confessed everything. And when Lucy became enraged, he pulled out the bag overflowing with cash. This was indeed the best way to appease her anger. Lucy immediately became utterly compliant. By 1981, Barry officially began his journey of arms transport. He flew the plane full of cargo to Nicaragua, expecting to be welcomed by the locals, but to his surprise, they weren't very interested in guns and ammunition. Instead, they scrambled to snatch Barry's sunglasses and shoes, infuriating him. He immediately called Monty to report the situation, but Monty simply reiterated, "Your job is to deliver the goods to the right place at the right time." Helpless, Barry had to return to Nicaragua again, but this time he learned his lesson. He brought a baseball bat for self-defense and even gave the rebels some small gifts. What surprised Barry even more was encountering Pablo and his 2 brothers there. It turned out they had no desire to fight at all. They only wanted to exploit the guise of resistance to swindle aid from the U.S. Pablo also realized the issue here and invited Barry back to his old trade. helping him transport contraband back to the US. Now with the control map, Barry naturally didn't refuse. In the following days, he was nothing short of a diligent worker bee, ferrying weapons to Nicaragua and then bringing contraband back to the US. The more he worked, the more prosperous he became. Barry couldn't handle the volume alone anymore, so he recruited 4 more excellent pilots, formed a flight crew, and plunged into an overt smuggling operation. Just as Barry was raking in huge sums of money, the CIA made a new move. The president not only wanted to transfer guns, but also decided to bring the rebels to the US for training and even establish a base right on Barry's land. But this didn't affect Barry much. It was simply exchanging contraband for live people. However, things didn't go as smoothly as the CIA imagined. The rebels, fed up with the poverty and backwardness in Nicaragua, sought to escape as soon as they set foot in the US, adamantly refusing to return home. Barry didn't pay much attention to these matters, but he faced a bigger problem: too much money. Barry only dared to deposit a fraction into the bank and then spent lavishly in his free time. He gifted year-long baseball tickets to the entire town, bought a new car for Lucy, and renovated their house from top to bottom. But no matter how much he spent, money kept pouring in like a tide. Barry was forced to establish numerous companies and create non-existent jobs for the townspeople, then hide money in every corner of his house, even burying it in the backyard. Now, Barry was living in glory, feeling like an omnipotent god. But then trouble also struck. One day, Lucy's shiftless younger brother, JB, came to Barry asking for some spending money. Barry didn't object, simply wanting to get rid of this fool as quickly as possible. But Lucy thought her brother couldn't live as a freeloader like that. She wanted Barry to find him a job. Since his wife had spoken, Barry had to comply. He took JB to the hangar, assigning him cleaning duty. After another flight was completed, this time the amount of money was so large it burst open a backpack. But this time, Barry clearly looked troubled. Barry truly had no more room to hide money. The backyard was already full, and everywhere he dug, he hit old money bags. Barry intended to stuff money into a toolbox, but as soon as he opened it, a cascade of money bags tumbled out like an avalanche. Finally, Barry had to discard money like trash in the horse stable. But before Barry could finish tidying up, he returned to find JB driving a new car, bringing his young girlfriend home. Lucy immediately flew into a rage, knowing her brother hadn't been doing any work. After being questioned by Barry, JB honestly confessed that while cleaning in the hangar, he had seen a backpack burst open due to too much money, so he conveniently took some to buy a new car and pick up girls. Barry was furious upon hearing this, but didn't know what to do. And the trouble didn't stop there, because Barry became increasingly reckless. In 1983, Barry officially came onto the DEA's radar. They laid in wait for him to return to catch him red-handed. But Barry quickly realized that while the DEA's planes were fast, they didn't have long range. Barry immediately ordered them to slow down, circling over the ocean until the sun was high, causing the DEA planes to run out of fuel and reluctantly turn back. But the DEA wasn't the only agency paying attention to Barry. The FBI also grew suspicious upon noticing the excessively large amounts of money flowing in and out of Mina's banks. They immediately drove to investigate. As soon as they opened their car doors and stepped out, they were met with numerous banks, both large and small, and a procession of luxury cars driving past. No matter how hard they thought, they couldn't fathom where the townspeople got so much money. At the same time, Border Patrol also heard of Barry. Learning from the DEA's experience, they dispatched 2 planes of the same type as Barry's, preparing for a protracted chase. Unable to shake them, Barry furiously plunged downwards, deciding to land directly on the highway. Regaining his composure, Barry jumped from the plane with his money bag, threw cash to the kids on the side of the road, then stole their bicycles and vanished. But before Barry could even breathe a sigh of relief, he received a call from Pablo. He too was being hunted by the DEA, unable to remain in Colombia any longer, so he had to flee to Nicaragua. Knowing this, Barry immediately flew to meet him, completely unaware that as he departed, JB was driving his new car out for a night of revelry. JB, boldly carrying a suitcase full of cash, walked into a restaurant. only to unexpectedly run into the sheriff dining there. JB suddenly turned pale and fled in a panic, but was still apprehended by the sheriff on the spot. At this time, Barry was meeting with Pablo and his group. Upon receiving the news from Lucy, he immediately called back, unable to say anything to Pablo, and hastily returned to Mina. Barry hired the best lawyer in the area, putting all his effort into getting JB out. But Pablo began to suspect that JB might have revealed all the information to the police, so he offered to help Barry handle the situation. After saying this, he hung up without giving Barry a chance to refuse. Barry knew exactly what Pablo intended to do and rushed out to meet JB. As JB stepped out of the station, Barry led him to the car and tossed him a package. Inside, besides enough money to last a lifetime, there was also a passport and plane tickets. Barry wanted JB to leave the US and live a quiet life. But JB thought Barry was abandoning him, angrily demanding that Barry send him money regularly or he would expose everything, even cursing Lucy horribly. Barry couldn't take it anymore. He got out of the car, intending to deal with JB. Seeing this, JB stomped on the gas and sped away, but at that very moment, the car suddenly exploded and money flew everywhere like snow. Barry was both shocked and enraged, knowing immediately this was Pablo's doing. To avoid suspicion, he had no choice but to drive the new car, towing JB's body deep into the forest. Even worse, the CIA discovered that half the weapons sent to Nicaragua had fallen into the hands of drug traffickers. Of the trained soldiers, very few returned to fight. Those higher up realized how foolish they had been all these years and immediately ordered Monty to cancel the entire plan. When he saw soldiers withdrawing from the area, Barry ran over to ask what was happening, but Monty coldly told him to await instructions. Upon hearing that, Barry felt as if he'd fallen into an ice pit, knowing he had been abandoned. Indeed, after Monty returned to his office, he immediately issued a fire disposal order for numerous documents, commanding the destruction of all information related to Barry. But Barry wouldn't sit still. He immediately told his entire team to pack up and run. Unexpectedly, just as they began, the DEA stormed in, followed by the ATF, federal police, and FBI. Each name alone sent shivers down one's spine. Everything was a chaotic mess. The entire group dragged Barry before the prosecutor, determined to make him pay for all his crimes. But before the trial could even begin, the prosecutor received a phone call. Barry immediately felt a sense of relief, knowing something was changing. Indeed, after the call ended, the prosecutor turned to Barry with an angry expression but then ordered his handcuffs removed. Barry simply walked out of the courtroom under everyone's astonished gaze. As soon as he exited, two men in suits ushered him into a car. Barry thought they were Monty's men, but to his surprise, he was driven straight to a private airport and flown directly to the highest place in the country, the White House. Amidst that solemn setting, a chill ran down Barry's spine. He couldn't understand why he had been brought there. But he soon got his answer. The CIA director and an army colonel had decided to have Barry deal with Pablo once more, using the opportunity to photograph him. Obtaining the evidence would sweep away the entire criminal organization. And so, Barry returned to his old trade, this time working for the White House. But he felt no peace of mind, knowing that even a slight slip-up would result in Pablo tearing him apart for the dogs. After parting ways with his family, Barry and his assistant began their perilous journey. They flew through a storm and reached Nicaragua. But as soon as they opened the plane door, the soldiers abruptly pointed their guns back at them. Barry panicked, raised his hands, and knelt to the ground, hastily explaining it was just a gift. Just then, Pablo drove up, his face filled with extreme anger, even ordering them shot on the spot, which stunned Barry, making him shrink back in terror. Fortunately, Pablo eventually stopped his soldiers, giving a mischievous smile as if teasing them. It turned out it was all just his cruel joke. Barry regained his composure and, with Pablo and his associates, transported the goods. Meanwhile, his subordinates secretly activated the hidden camera in the aircraft cabin, clearly recording the faces of Pablo and his associates. Thanks to this, the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, had concrete evidence. The director threw a celebratory party with everyone and publicly exposed Pablo's crimes on television. Barry was frozen in disbelief as he watched, because in the photo, His face was as clear as day. Lucy was utterly furious, knowing full well her husband had been discarded by the government. At the same time, Pablo also learned Barry had betrayed him and immediately sent assassins to the U.S. for revenge. But the trouble didn't stop there, as Barry was also implicated in the smuggling ring, and the FBI decided to seize all his assets. The night before the seizure, Barry's wife Lucy took all their valuable jewelry with her so no one could confiscate it. The next morning, the FBI arrived as scheduled, turned Barry's house upside down, and confiscated all the hidden money. Barry understood he had no way out, so he told Lucy to take their children back to her hometown and start over to avoid Pablo's watchful eye. Though Lucy was heartbroken, for the sake of their children, she accepted. Things gradually drew to a close. Barry eventually received a reduced sentence, only being penalized with 1,000 hours of community service. But he knew the real danger hadn't arrived yet, so every night he changed hotels to sleep and recorded his experiences until February 19, 1986, when he was shot dead by an assassin in his car. After Barry's death, the U.S. National Security Council seized the recordings, but ultimately, the entire affair was still exposed. Nevertheless, Lucy no longer cared. She returned to her hometown and personally raised their children to adulthood. The video ends here. Thank you for watching until the end. Let us know what you think of this film in the comments below.